We're back on Localite. I've got Chad Sperry of the Mountain Hood Cycling Classic with me, and before the break I wanted to ask you a little bit about the training wheels to 12-year-olds, and just talk real briefly a little about that. And it happens down at Water's Edge, the new Mid-Columbia Medical Center facility, the wellness facility, and it's kind of a cool deal.
It's a really cool deal. It's something that we developed about 5 years ago with Mid-Columbia Medical Center. We were putting together a kids event that we wanted to run in conjunction with the Mountain Cycling Classic. You know, we're very concerned about the level of obesity rates and so forth in this country with kids and so forth, and as was Mid-Columbia Medical Center. And so we kind of worked together to partner on this event called the Mountain Cycling Classic Kids Race. And what we want to do with this event is we want to encourage kids to get out on their bikes to ride. Cycling is a great low-impact activity for kids, for them to gain fitness, yet still be able to not be too harsh on their growing and developing bodies. So one idea was hatched to bring all these professional riders in, do this huge, extravagant program and so forth. And so we put on an event that makes them feel like they're in their own little Tour de France type of a race. We have a gigantic finish line structure, banners, we've got music, we've got a race announcer. The pro riders actually will come down and cheer the kids on themselves and ride
great.
In the race with the kids. They sign autographs. It also gives us an opportunity to bring the kids in and bring their bikes in. We do full-on bike checks to make sure that the bike is operating safely, that the brakes are working, gears are working, everything is in square, safe order. The other aspect of it that's been very beneficial to us, aside from encouraging kids to get on their bike and train and ride, is it always helps when you have this top-level professional rider who's talking to the kids about wearing their helmets. That he or she wears a helmet whenever they ride or whenever they train. And so mom and dad can tell the kids till they're blue in the face, you need to wear your helmet. But when some major pro rider comes in and says, you know what, I always wear my helmet, boy, those kids will perk up and they'll be wearing that helmet the next time they run out the door.
Absolutely, from the top down. So yeah. Now the pro athletes, I mean, going from the kids up to the pros, these folks are training in, we don't even probably, as normal folks like myself, even know what it's like to train like these people train, but you do. So tell us a bit about that.
Training for cycling is a very time-consuming project. It's for them to be competing at the level that they do. They're generally logging between 400 and 500 miles a week. And so it requires a lot of time on the bike, anywhere from 4 to 6 hours a day of just saddle time is what we call it. And they're actually out there and they're working on developing their cardio, they're working on developing their muscular structure and their fitness, their stamina, and then they start working on certain aspects of doing some higher intensity type works, some hill climbing, some strength training. They also will hit the gym and do weights and things like that. So it's a very huge time commitment for these folks to get into the level of fitness that they do. And then once they're there, their fitness is just phenomenal. The ability and the speeds that they can maintain at that level is just unbelievable.
Yeah, that sounds like it. The Tour de France, for instance, very household name. How does this? Because you do get some people, and correct me if I'm wrong, but you do get some people that compete in that come to this.
Yes, that is correct.
So tell me about that.
Well, the one thing I do need to specify is the Mountain Cycling Classic is definitely not the Tour. The Tour is the Tour. It is the biggest sporting event in the world, actually. When you look at the number of spectators and participants, it draws more than any other sporting event in the world. It has the largest attendance and viewership of any sporting event in the world. So it's huge. It's also very grueling. It lasts for 3 weeks. But the Mountain Cycling Classic was modeled after the Tour de France in the way that it's structured and the way that it's run, meaning that it's a multi-day discipline and it's different types of formats of courses that make up the event. So you've got some longer, grueling races. You've got some big mountains that you have to overcome. You've got what we call individual time trials, which is basically just the rider against the clock, and they don't have any team support or help from their fellow teammates. So there's a number of those different elements that kind of go into making that particular formula. And we've tried to model some of the big mountain climbs and some of that diversity just like you find at the Tour de France, because there is some aspects of this race that are very unique within the U.S. that look kind of almost Euro in nature, like you're up in the French Alps in some sections. that not many other events in the country can have that same demographic and that same kind of climate and landscape.
Okay. So, and you mentioned starting out like in Portland, then, you know, working your way through the gorge, and then up to Mount Hood, and then out into Eastern Oregon, you know. Are there equipment changes? I mean, what's involved in the equipment side of it?
Yeah, the equipment changes rapidly depending on the stage. Some cyclists could be using a bike that's quite a bit beefier as far as the tubing and the strength of the wheels, because they're going to be sprinting, where you're going to be putting a lot of leverage on the bike, a lot of strain and stress on the bike. Other stages require a rider to ride solo against the clock. On those particular stages, those athletes are trying to find the most aerodynamic setup as possible. So those are the type of setups where you'll see the riders with the special teardrop helmets. They have the solid disc wheels, and everything's looks like it's just come out of a wind tunnel, and they're really leaned out on their bikes, and they're completely aerodynamic. And then you have things like your mountain stages, where they try to find the lightest setup as possible. They're finding bikes at 14, 15 pounds a piece for the complete bike. They're looking for the lightest equipment. It might not be quite as strong as a sprinting type stage, but it's just sheer lightest bike that they can find, because every ounce, every pound that they're carrying up that hill pulls that much more drag on the riders as they're fighting against gravity to attain that summit finish.
Yeah.
And so it definitely varies. And these guys will come in to an event like the Mountain Cycling Classic that has such a diverse number of different stages, and they could easily have 3 to 4 bikes per rider, and then you times that by 8 riders that make up a team. It's a pretty big fleet of mechanics and equipment trailers that come in to support an event of this nature and support these teams.
Wow. We'll hold the thought. I want to talk about that when we come back. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back with Chad Sperry and the Mount Hood Cycling Classic right here on Localite.